We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years approximately 86 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a 3rd grade education will tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of every 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America.
It's the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land. Through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives.
Good afternoon on the West Coast. Good afternoon in the mountain. Good afternoon in the Central. Good afternoon on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the reparationist perspective, bringing you those FREEDMEN hot topics and making the case for reparations, making the case for weaponizing our vote, socializing our suffering. How y'all doing, family? Welcome, Yaira. Welcome, Geechee Lady Designs. Welcome, Reps. And to those of you who have yet to type where you're tuning in from and who you are, welcome, Twitter. Welcome, Facebook. Just a reminder, the only way I see your comments is if you're over in ScrewTube. So join us over here if you'd like to be a co-host with your comments on today's broadcast. I'm so excited to bring you this. Lots of the new Black media has been all over this topic of what San Francisco NAACP, headed by Amos Brown, who is the president of the NAACP San Francisco chapter, who also is a minister there, who also sits on the California Reparations Task Force for the state. Is this a peek into what we can anticipate? Because you know, as California goes, so goes the nation, right? But before I bring up my illustrious guest, Arthur Ward has yet to chime in, but I do have the incomparable Dawn Page of CBAC, Concerned Black American Citizens, out of North Carolina with me. Oh, she's in the building. She's in the lobby waiting to be brought up. But before I bring her up, I want to thank each and every one of you, including Dawn, for your illustrious comments at the OMB sessions, the Office of Management and Budget. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, right now, every 27 years, the OMB has been meeting to determine our classification as a race. And as we know, we've learned lots over here in over 300 videos at the Reparations Perspective about how these wanton white supremacists have constructed race only to weaponize it against us to make us a permanent bottom caste. Because you see, everyone benefiting from our civil rights and affirmative action but us. We are on the bottom. I've shared with you many times about how African blacks out here are 333% more liquid than U.S. black, is how it's titled in the 2014 Color of LA Wealth Report. And that was almost 10 years ago. So race is being used against us, and we're just in this heated exchange about how we want to identify, because we've never had a choice. Oh, we've had Barack Obama and Grace Ming, Representative Grace Ming out of New York, decide the Negro was offensive on the census. It's on the bulk of the Gen X and some of the boomers. It's on our birth certificates. So who are you to determine that that's offensive? I never received a letter in the mail to weigh in. I would venture to say none of you've got to weigh in. So federally, they just decided an African American, which is why we want free, right? And an Asian woman who is sitting up here spearheading the Office of New Americas, which is going to give more of our reparations and protections to immigrants, right? Decided that Negro was offensive. The horror. So shout out to everyone, no matter who you repped, that you came in there and you made your point. I didn't get to join till today. And I'll share those comments with you a little later in the broadcast because I don't want to detain Dawn in the lobby. But I do want to give you a big shout out and a big thank you from my heart. It was very, very rough. But let's allow Dawn to weigh in because she was there a couple of times and I loved her comments. Let's bring her on up. Ladies and gentlemen, she is family to most, new to some, the illustrious, incomparable Dawn Paige CBAC. Welcome to the live, family. Welcome to the live. Hold on, let me get you up here. Hi, Dawn.
Hey, how are you, Angela Nirvana?
I am blessed and unstoppable.
Hello to your audience as well.
Thank you so much. I wanted to hear from you. I was giving accolades before we jump into today's topic because you've had your own experiences of being sidelined in High Point that I definitely want them to make the correlation so that we can be on guard, at the ready for the calls to action to shut this down. But before we get into that, please share with me what you thought about the last 3 days of call-ins of the OMB. I was only able to make, well, I heard you on a couple, but I was at work when it was going on and couldn't really focus and was able to weigh in today. And I wanted to share my comments with my illustrious audience who probably weren't even on that phone call. How did you feel about it?
Well, I thought overall it was a great showing of Black American excellence, and I was really pleased with how it ended up. Things started off a little rocky, and I think we saved the best for last. It was interesting. I think that the tribes were well represented. It started off. It was just interesting. Each day there was each group was more represented than the other. So all in, it ended up being a nice representation. And the thing that I was most proud of is how articulate and smart Black Americans and American Negroes and American freedmen, all of us, how smart all of us sounded and data driven and composed and sharp. And the stories that people were able to weave in. And it was truly a historic occasion. This is the first time we've ever I had the opportunity to have some agency when these things have come about. So I want to shout out to NAASD, who tweeted out the initial notification and made it possible for us all to jump on and get involved in this. And I think really we are the stronger for it. I swear these weeks and months on Twitter have been rough, but I think really we have the cream has risen to the top. And I think what we're going to end up with is really going to please everyone in the end. I'll stop there. I have some more, general comments, but overall, very pleased. All the acronyms, all of us, all the tribes, we came together and we really presented ourselves well. And I was just proud. I didn't have a moment of embarrassment. We did well. Well done.
I'm so glad to hear that. Well done. Well, I did feel a little trying to get this hair together, y'all. Ooh, the ghetto. I had a little bit of a, hi Patty P, hi The Rock. Yes, I miss y'all too very, very much. In a I would say a few more weeks, I started a new gig, and I had to know laws for about 5 different jurisdictions in health administration. And it's a lot to take on. It's a lot of studying. And so, yes, I've been out of pocket, but as soon as I smooth out, you know how the first 90 days are. They're very, very vitally important. And so, yes, I will be back a lot more often as soon as I get through this rough patch. But it takes a lot to develop content to bring you, and then have the energy to manage the level of homework I get from my job. Keep your jobs, family. Don't disparage having a job. You better thank God if you have a job, especially one if it's paying you an American wage. Those have gone the way of the dodo bird out here. I was working in the courts before the pandemic, and then I've been impacted by that for the last 3 years with underemployment. We still, from the previous work I had, we're still not restored to the courts. And trying to get work, for American freedmen, all over the country, folks are catching the blues. So don't disparage having a steady stream of income. It's okay to form your businesses, but until your business is making money, family, it's a hobby. Get you a job, okay? Anyway, so that's why you haven't seen me. I apologize for that. That will be changing in just another few weeks. You'll see me probably coming back on my Sunday slot. That's the easiest time for me to come on because track season is gearing up for my daughter. And mama's got to be there to cheer the loudest. So thank you guys for joining the live. With that being said, I was a little shell-shocked when I heard, and I had to jump off, when I heard someone refer to American freedmen. Hi, Harry Blackfire. Yes, work is hard to come by, and I'm a college undergraduate, okay? Yes, family, we'll get into that momentarily. When I heard that someone conflated, not even conflated, because American freedman is a descendant of U.S. chattel slavery. That is how it's defined. But the fact that so few people know the term American freedman, that's problematic. And that just goes to show you the games and the manipulation that has gone on to keep us off of the 40 acres and a mule, as ordered by Sherman Order number 15, right? So all these games to get us mired in confusion over our identity. And so the very first day I tuned in, I heard someone say, when he hears American freedman, he hears emancipated slave. And what we can agree is that lots of people want to get away from that identity of enslavement. They don't. So we're working on different ways to approach that. But it's so sad to me, and I feel like we've kind of failed the youth in not coming up with schools, and mostly because we've been economically disadvantaged, right? Like the Asians have their schools and the Jews have their schools to teach their children about their history. That's what American freedmen need. Because if the youth understood their origins, they wouldn't be so angry with us when we use that term when we want to identify using that term. What do you think about that, Dawn?
Yeah, I think what we saw on the call is indeed a manifestation of the multiple misclassifications that we've gone through. And obviously, if we don't have that knowledge within us, we can't, makes it more difficult for us to pass it down to our children. And so we've kind of left them vulnerable to media, social media, and maybe other ethnic groups that are more grounded and anchored in their own acknowledgement and embracement of their culture. For us, it is our essence. We exude culture and creativity without even thinking. So the idea of having to gatekeep that is new to us, because there was a time when no one ever wanted to be us. But now, not only do they want to appropriate our culture, they also want to assume our identities. And that is a new thing for us. And now we're seeing a more proactive erasure, and we have to protect our children from that. So we have to instill pride in all of who we are, whether it's American Negro, whether it's free person of color, free Black American, American freedmen, Gullah Geechee, ADOS, FBA. We have to instill our culture, the many threads of it, and empower our children, just like we are on Twitter and social media. How we, all that steel in our spine comes from that, confidence and the knowledge. Like, yes, we've done our lineage. Let's share that with our children. Let's share it with them.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for weighing in. In Pursuit, I see you. Okay, Patty P, welcome, love. Okay, if I don't call you out, it's because we got to keep the momentum, but I will definitely do so towards the end of the broadcast. Thank you guys, one and all, for being here. Keep the chat lit. Okay, family. So some of you know, and many of you may not know, but we have been in a serious drive towards reparations on the state level. But I recently learned of a San Francisco reparations on the city level that was going down. And even greater than that, at the last task force hearing, I learned from one of the spokespersons that called out Dr. Reverend Amos Brown that he was also sitting on the San Francisco task force. I just learned that he's the president of the NAACP. So I'm seeing all these conflicts of interest, but I would have been none the wiser had he not come out with this letter. Now, I'm not going to.
He's the president of the San Francisco chapter of the NAACP.
Exactly. Correct. He lives in San Francisco, and he's over the NAACP of San Francisco. He's also on the San Francisco task force, and he's also on the state task force. Now, many of us playing both sides, Geechee Lady Designs, correct. Yeah, and this is what we've come to find out. So here we are thinking, because he voted for lineage-based reparations at the state level. He seemed to be in support of cash reparations. He's got all of these amazing, pretty speeches. Whenever we meet at the task force, he takes over the mic and, gives long histories. He knows everything that has happened to us and how we were re-enslaved here in what was supposed to be a free state. Fugitive Slave Law Act, he can run it down. Akin to how the Democrats do often, right? They can sit up here and they can hold forums on the Freedmen Bank, right? Only to give millions in lending and grants to immigrants. But they like to weaponize the history of American freedmen to give them the come up, to give them not just money from the Freedmen Bank to build up their communities. I remember Luis Pasteur, he got on there talking about how they've got 24 lines of different Latinas And they're down there with his savings and loan bank, credit union, I think it was, down in North Carolina, and how he was happy to receive that $70 million from these monies that were earmarked so that he can lend this money to his people to buy homes and take over North Carolina. So they love taking our history and weaponizing it against us to give themselves bailouts, to give Ukraine money for their the U.S. war with Russia, to give the illegals housing, health care, driver license, the right to vote. They're doing all these things in the name of the never-ending Holocaust that freedmen are experiencing, only to turn around and to give it away to themselves and all these other groups. And so he talked really, really well. And we believed he was on our side on the state reparations task force hearings. Well. Then we get to the blow up. Everybody's seen it. How he came out with his own letterhead, with his email address and phone number on the letterhead to talk against the $5 million that the San Francisco board was seeming to be in agreement with per American freedmen. Now, let me set it up for you. We've been legislated out of the state of California from 17% of the population to around 2%. I'm talking American freedmen when you don't include the Black immigrants. Okay, so when you talk about $5 million per American freedman, you're not talking about a whole gang of money. It ain't like 20% of us are living in the Bay. We've been legislated out of the Bay, so we're not there, right? So keep that in mind as I read to you this letter that was written by yours truly, Reverend Amos Brown. And then
may I add?
Go ahead.
And we might need to set up a signal so I'm not like I am on social media and rude and interrupt. But regarding what you're about to read, let's think also before you start to read the population size. She said from 17% to 2% in California, but in San Francisco, the estimation by the Freedmen Party is that there are approximately 10,000 eligible recipients at the high end. The descendant community at most is 10,000. So we'll call them the descendant community for
okay. That even makes it more doable. Okay. So on March the 14th, Reverend Amos Brown writes, San Francisco NAACP rejects $5 million reparation payment to Blacks, calls for reparations to focus on investments and opportunities in 5 key areas at Board of Supervisors meeting on reparations today. Now, when you think about the urban removal that has happened, all these different reinvestment programs that were supposed to give American freedmen, the descendant community, a financial leg up in their own communities. Who are we talking about if you've driven the majority out? These reinvestments, these opportunity zones, all these different fancy ways that government comes up with to pretend to infuse capital into our dire economic situations, only to turn around and do absolutely nothing. Did you want to weigh in on that, Dawn?
I think you got it covered.
Okay, great. I'll keep going. So it says the San Francisco NAACP today called upon the Board of Supervisors to reject a one-time $5 million reparation payment to Blacks, but instead called upon the city to make investments in 5 key areas to atone for a history of racism, discrimination, and mistreatment. Now, let me stop there because I got another thought. Here they have flattened blackness. So, and I don't know how he voted. I've got to dig a little deeper to find that. But here he voted for lineage-based reparations. But in the Bay, this 5 million was not lineage specific. I've gotten that question before. You guys keep chatting. I can't see you right now. I'm reading from another screen.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's
Sure.
talk about that. Is it or is it not lineage based? But first, so that would influence how you feel about this statement, whether or not it was lineage based or not. Now, what this San Francisco agreement does do is it starts off and it says that it is for Black / African American, or at least 10 years and 18 years old. And then you must also meet criteria that basically the latest period or most recent period is 1996. And just for the record, in 1996, there were approximately 1.5 million Black immigrants in the entire United States. Okay?
Wow.
The entire United States in 1996. So this claim that they are proposing in San Francisco, the earliest time is obviously 1865, but the earliest modern day time is 1937 all the way through 1996. And I just have to correct myself because there's also there are basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buckets, and one of them does go through 2008, and that is for members of a historically marginalized group that experienced lending discrimination in San Francisco from 37 to 68, or subsequently experienced lending discrimination in formerly redlined areas, San Francisco communities between 1968 and 2008. So the formerly part obviously could then, if let's say you could not use the Black and African and you had to throw that out and use only these time periods, obviously once you get past a certain period of time, probably after 1977 on this last one, which I would imagine is not just the $1 home, which is one of them, but obviously it would be loans or grants. So you could see where there could be non-descendants getting into that category. And I hope I haven't confused everyone, but
No. Did you find what they were proposing, Dawn?
Yeah, I thought I sent that to you.
Oh, I didn't even. You did. Okay. Well, is this the one, the Twitter one that you sent me?
Here it is, right here.
Okay. Okay, I got it now, sis. Okay. Would you like to, since you have it, would you like to share with the viewers what it consists of, or do you want me to read this? I think it's important to lay the foundation of what was being proposed.
Okay, yeah, before we'll see that this is just the eligibility that I'm reading.
Okay.
Now, do you have what they were talking about? What they were calling for was $5 million upfront one-time payment, but then they were talking about $97,000 a year for perpetuity. That means forever. And so in order to qualify, you had to fall in just one of these buckets, essentially. And there's also the ability to buy a home for $1. So I'm sure what it is, the city or whatever fund that they had or whatever monies in HUD that we hadn't got our share of would probably be moved into some sort of fund. And if you qualified, you would pay $1. It's not like you're literally buying a house for $1. It's that all you American freedmen or American Negro, whatever, has to pay is $1. So
that's it.
I don't know if there were other things involved. I think they have quite a lengthy list, which probably then also makes the San Francisco NAACP's letter even more disingenuous, because they try to give the impression that it's just a check.
Absolutely. Well, the ABC News article I pulled up is only talking about the $5 million, the $97,000 annual, and the $1 home. So I'd have to dig a little deeper to find the extensive list if there was anything else being offered. But let's just keep it a buck. You know, everything we do in terms of programs, they find a way to obfuscate, right? Like when you think in terms of affirmative action benefiting white women predominantly, when you think of it benefiting LGBTQ white men and immigrants, you can see how when you out here looking for work, because there was not a secure enough gate put up on affirmative action, that makes it extremely difficult, because any of those other groups can fill that bucket. So by the time, you know, they get to you, there's nothing left. So you're constantly in this perpetual state of looking for work, because these programs that they give with the left, they've come up with ways to give away with the right. And so that's what makes what he is suggesting in lieu of the money so egregious to me, because how dare you? And then he was caught in a Twitter space. He didn't know. He was on the phone. They called him up. His number was on the paper. He answered and said that we wouldn't know what to do with $5 million, and doubled down on his proposals here. Now we're going to just touch on these things, because I got some things. I got the reparationist perspective to share. I want Dawn to share and weigh in. And then we're going to read the letter that came after, where he pretty much was rebranding public housing and jobs in lieu of cash repair. And the way I see it, and Dawn, you can weigh in whenever you choose. The way I see it is with a one-time payment of $5 million and $97,000 a year. We've got the money to build our homes from the ground up in the communities where clean water is, right? We got money to do the things that folks are talking about we need done. If you want land, buy it with your cash. I'm saying put the skrill in people's hands. If we have $5 million cash payout, you don't think some of us would create companies wherein we could hire our own people? So why do we want to be in a perpetual state of enslavement and microaggressions on a public and private Crayola wanted white supremacist plantation, when we could take our money and do all the things that they're trying to allegedly give us to spend our money for us? Did you want to weigh in on that before I keep going, Dawn? Uh-oh. Dawn, you still there?
I'm here. I was actually trying to find an article, but I think it'd probably give more context also to read when we look at the areas that he suggested. I believe there was also a connection with maybe nonprofits that they might already be associated with. So essentially, don't give the money a direct payment to the descendants. We want you to use these programs, and then of course we have the people in place, the entities that we would funnel that money into. So I think it's important, or a good time to stop here and talk about how people are going to take this and obviously mirror it with the Freedmen's Bureau and the Office of Freedmen's Affairs, and basically say, this is why we don't want a third party handling our direct payments. And, you know, as part of, you know, all the reparationist group, whether it's American freedmen, American descendants of slavery, foundational Black Americans, American Negroes, none of us want our money being processed through a third party. None of us want money having to change hands through third parties. What we're talking about is an agency, a federal agency that is staffed by us. There's legislation that would enable us to have people of our ethnic group only working here. There are government training programs that teach people how and where the money is and how to match people with money. This is a service that if we were immigrants, we would be very familiar. Some people who may be on social assistance are familiar with having caseworkers, and yes, it would be similar. But in this case, the mission of these caseworkers at the agency would be, their primary mission would be to facilitate economic self-sufficiency by, one, making sure you're counted, your paperwork is uploaded into the system so that you can get your direct check deposited into your account. However, there's all kinds of other things, services that we need, where you may have once gone to apartment.com or indeed.com. We want to have those types of services under an agency, because then we're able to count how many of us are being hired or not hired.
Yes.
We can then have established quotas, because what we have is corporations who literally get tax incentives, tax breaks for previously hiring minorities. Now, with an ethnic designation, with federal recognition, we will then be able to write policies, have an agency with funds earmarked to run the agency. As I said, the main mission being to provide counting or enumeration services. You're getting your genealogy together, and then matching making sure you got a bank account and everything so that you can get your check direct deposited. But then the agency will also, if you want a job, you go there. You don't go to the employment office anymore. It's like the end of the microaggressions, where you went to the DMV there. Now you go here to the DMV, and you don't deal with nasty people in line. It's just basically carving out all of the money that's supposedly allocated to us in every other governmental department and agency, and bringing it under this one agency. It has nothing to do with processing your check, but everything to do with making sure that you get it. And just in general, that is the difference between what NARC and in COBRA, they want to literally have the government. So people understand the difference.
Please help.
They literally want the government. For instance, the National Reparations Institute, run by the Muhammad brothers, where they have a lot of elite of the black bourgeois on their board. They are calling for $73 trillion. They literally believe that the government is going to give them $73 trillion to basically do what they laid out in the San Francisco model. Then you have NARC and COBRA. NARC's plan on their website is basically saying, give us about 100 trillion and we'll handle it from there. None of us grassroots entities in any way are pushing to become the next NARC or NAACP in that sense, where we would have any kind of hand on the money. Do we want to be employees? I hope we all do. I hope we all want to be project managers and caseworkers and IT people and doctors and HR people, et cetera, et cetera. But we do have to increase our representation within the government systems in order to get our fair share. It just is the way it is. That's not to say you can't build alternative, independent mutual aid societies. Shout out to Art. We got to do all of the above. So I just wanted to make that very distinct difference or attempt to,
Thank you.
when we're talking about the Office of or the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. That is what it is going to attempt to do. It is attempting to provide genocide protection services, economic, and facilitate economic self-sufficiency. And we don't have any entities that have that as a primary mission, but we have all kinds of immigrant agencies and other agencies that have as their primary goal to ensure economic self-sufficiency. So it's a real thing, and it is an action word for every other group but ours.
That was powerful. Thank you for dropping knowledge, sis. I so appreciate you being here. So the letter goes on to say that they want to redirect the focus away from the $5 million cash payout to providing reparations in education, jobs, housing, healthcare, and a cultural center for Blacks in San Francisco. Well, in my humble opinion, these are things that should be fundamental. These should not constitute as reparations, right? You don't get to legislate us into bottom caste in these areas and then decide to name it reparations, right? What do you think about that, Dawn? That's the most cynical approach to repairing the few that are left in San Francisco, is to give them what they should be fundamentally getting anyway. These are the things that they've been robbed of, right? Which is why they're no longer living there, why they've been driven out of the state. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're facing, and yeah, I think you pretty much covered it.
Well, I want to talk about I want to read them because I'm like, would he go sit down somewhere? Black students don't perform as well as their peers. Well, we all know that there's a preschool to prison pipeline. We all know that they're grooming these young children to be the not so new slaves in the private prison industrial complex. It's a whole agenda.
I think a couple of people pointed out, if you look at the programs, it's not that they just offered programs, but they offered remedial programs. So when Angela Nirvana says basically writing us into the bottom caste, they literally chose remedial programs in the education. And we can I'm sure we'll get to the psychological aspect. Right now, we just like chopping up and laying out the details right now, but that is one of the elements of the San Francisco statement, to put us in.
Yes.
Just to assume that we would start with remedial versus STEM programs, et cetera, et
Isn't
cetera.
that deep? To make us consummate slaves. I was about to read that. I can't see the comments. I'm reading over on the other page. Thank you, Don, for making me aware of what they're saying. And then, I'll flash it on the screen when I get back over there as Dawn breaks it down and unpacks things for you too. So it says, we need remedial, to your point, co-host in the chat. We need remedial programs to help our children with reading, math, and science. To their point, not STEM. The school district and the city have a moral obligation to raise up all children, and especially those whose families have been disadvantaged by discrimination. So let's not put them in private homes, in safe communities, free of redlining and environmental racism, so that they can flourish. Because right now, there's quite a large number of Black folks barely hanging on in the Bay. They've been rendered homeless, unemployed, and underemployed, okay? They've been gentrified out, but let's keep going. Economic empowerment. Here he goes to me, my opinion, with a plug to get the people sheep walking to go vote for Joe Crow. With President Biden's infrastructure bill, we want to see more Black people get the opportunity to get jobs on the billions of dollars in infrastructure work that will be done in our community and our state. Excuse me, these billions of dollars is a reparations we could be paid, right? So that we can have companies that can compete for these contracts and these different things, and that we can hire people that want to be hired. But with our reparations, we can also invest in business and hire our own, so they don't have to deal with the microaggressions that they're dealing with by the Crayola wanted white supremacy on these job sites. Once again, what is infrastructure bill to us if affirmative action benefits everybody but us? And right now you've got the Asians on the Hill trying to put a lock on us in terms of locking us into a permanent bottom caste, because now they've benefited from the affirmative action and they want to close the gate. They want to do to the nation what they've managed to succeed in doing with Prop 209 in California, where they've locked us out of the UCs. When they did that and reversed it and called, and they had a freedman do this, Ward Connerly. You guys have been to the show. You already know. You've seen it on the archives, but to the new ones, it was an actual American freedman who said it's practicing reverse racism to have quotas in the UC school systems like Berkeley, thing of this nature, that it is discriminatory against the immigrants and the white folks to make special concessions for American freedmen here in the state that have been legislated out. This is a part of that. So now they're on the Hill. Now that they're making a median income of around $86,000 a year, they want to lock us out completely. And like Dr. Claude Anderson said, we can't fight everybody. You can jump in whenever you feel frisky. Housing. We want more housing, more public housing, more affordable housing. Why do we still want to be for Blacks? Why do we want these things? Why wouldn't we want $5 million to build our own homes in environmentally safe communities where the police aren't there to execute us by state sanction, even though we're unarmed? Why would we want more public housing? It's ghettoizing. This is what he wants. This is reparations now. This becomes reparations by his definition. Take the money away and let's give them more jobs. Not let's give them financial independence. Not let's teach them how to own and operate business. And I'm not knocking a job. I have one. I'm working on other streams, as I'm sure you guys are too. But the bottom line is, this is the direction he is suggesting in lieu of the money where we can make ourselves whole. Back to the text. There should be preferential treatment for Blacks to keep our people in this city. San Francisco has fallen from 16% Black population to less than 5%. We need a new version of 40 acres and a mule that benefits and assists Blacks to live and thrive in San Francisco, a city that has done everything it can do to drive us out through discrimination, as even wholesale removal during and through the urban renewal. This is his writing, y'all. Urban renewal programs in the 60s and 70s. Okay, so you can sit up here and fully admit that we've been legislated out of here. You can fully admit that. That's what I mean by how our history gets weaponized against us while they avoid having a conversation about it. We are still living a never-ending Holocaust. The majority of our people are. Many of us that come to these streams, we're kind of like the exception. Most of us own property, but it doesn't mean we don't have the same struggles. I still have a struggle finding work, and many of my peers do too. So what I'm trying to say here is he can cite what has happened to us, but still wants to keep us in a perpetual state of poverty and militarized police and unemployment and underemployment. Healthcare. Blacks don't have the same lifespan as the majority population. We need programming that positively impacts our health, our longevity, and our mental health. Let me go back to housing. In the limited reparations package that we know, Dawn just shared with you, The reparations plan was talking about $1, buying housing for $1. Now, if you got 5,097,000 a year, and you could buy a house for $1, you're talking about closing the racial wealth gap with reparations like in a flash of a pan. Now, if you blow your 5 million or whatever you're going to blow it on, okay, that's nobody's business. But to me, is this a more efficient way of spending money? Doesn't this put money in the pockets of the folks who own public housing? Do we own public housing? No. And does this, when it comes to jobs, if we're in a perpetual state of being the employee, are we really benefiting from the profits of these companies that he wants us to continue to go work for, that are always putting us into a chamber of microaggressions and just nasty and mean? And I mean, you just saw about Rasheen, how he got Emmett Till because a white man drove him to work and would not bring him back, I guess, 90 minutes to his house. Rasheen Carter, I think the brother's name is. And he called his mom saying he don't have a ride home. The race soldiers would not allow that brother to even wait at the police station, even though he told them he's being harassed, okay? And so he goes on his way. His mama talks to him and loses contact. Next thing you know, they find in his head severed. His spleen, his vertebrae, whatever, is on the other part of the woods. And the race soldiers say there's nothing to see here. Now, that's an extreme rendition of what we're dealing with, but oftentimes it's in the kind of same ballpark. So why would you rescind money where we can be free of this kind of nonsense, where we can be free of discrimination in hiring, where we can be free of the demand to know Spanish just to get a job interview? Back to the text.
So let me also say, yeah, let's point out some elements of this letter. So have you read the list? Are those like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lists on the
I'm about finished with this letter. The first letter that came out.
Well, I just want to point out that the structure of the letter and, the role of the NAACP, we haven't talked about that, but the letter starts off with, a signaling to, the establishment.
Yep.
To white supremacy, that we are on code, we are following instructions, we are shaming the descendant population so that they realize, we're shaming them, so obviously to establish the shame element, and act indignant, but not come with any kind of alternative or any kind of scholarship on what it should be. And then we move into the programs, and that's another dog whistle to white supremacy. We understand that we are supposed to keep, first we shame them away from money, and now we give them programs that they will have no control over, but these programs will be obviously insufficient. And we're also signaling when we list the remedial nature of the programs, and also when we mention public housing. That can only be speaking to, the white power structure that they kneel to. And so then we launch into the pastoral, traditional hell, fire, and brimstone ending. But basically, it's a study in Negro management, and it is just a continuation of, the role of the NAACP. They're not all created equal, but obviously the San Francisco NAACP is one of those that is definitely not looking out for our best interests.
Thank you so much for that, Dawn. That was my daughter calling. I didn't know if she was back from her meet or not. So I was telling her to please text me. I love how you unpack that. That's a brilliant observation of the actual events that are going on.
Let me throw out another thing, an interesting
Please.
thing. So again, we have one person who has their hands in 3 different pots, which is the San Francisco presidency of the NAACP, a seat on the San Francisco task force, which is proposing this, and then also the co-chair of the California State Task Force. So interestingly enough, we also have a timeline. So obviously everyone was kind of, bowled over by this grand betrayal, obviously. How could you sit on 2 task force, vote in favor of lineage based on one, and then it's when you have an opportunity, when you have your own agency, this is what you do. He came out with a rejection or a retraction or clarification, I should say. But and he went on Roland Martin's show, and I'm speaking of Dr. Amos Brown, went on Roland Martin's show. Both the clarification and the appearance on Roland Martin were both painfully inadequate explanations having to do with we had a typo. So if you're a major organization in such a sensitive situation, to say that you left out a 97, if they were in favor of installments, that you left out a $97,000 a year payment, doesn't really quite jibe. And even Roland Martin, who's not even eligible for reparations, as far as I know, couldn't really let Dr. Brown slide. His explanation and his demeanor was quite defensive when he was on Roland Martin. And I really encourage you to check it out and see for yourself and see the truth for yourself. It seems like someone that got their hand caught in a cookie jar. So I think the interesting thing, you guys, listen to this. On the San Francisco task force that recommended this $5 million, when they listed the harms, one of the harms that they listed, which I thought was very interesting, was Prop 209. We know what Prop 209 is, right? So Prop 209 in California is a law that prevents compensation or consideration based on for education, for contracts or employment on the basis of race. So they actually listed that as a harm. To me, that is extremely savvy and sophisticated, because that's one of the main things, obviously, that people always tell us about strict scrutiny, but we don't have anyone with the balls or the intellect or the political willpower to challenge that and come up with a cogent argument. But in the context of a reparations task force, it makes so much sense, and it was so smart, in my opinion, of them to put it in there. This hurts us because obviously if we're talking about redlining and all of these things, there were policies put in place, why not the policy that was meant to keep us from being restored as one of the harms? And I looked in a little further into the head of the task force, and he's connected with the money management industry.
Wow.
And San Francisco has a lot of black money. Y'all might not have a lot of black folks, but there's a lot of black tech money. He's connected, I'm sure.
Excuse me, which black though? Because
it doesn't even matter. We passed that part. Let's look at
no,
the
because
requirements. Let's look at the requirements. Let's look at what they're paying out, and let's look at the eligibility.
yes, I get that, Dawn. But when you're talking about blacks in tech, that's not freedmen.
Oh, well, I don't care. I don't care where the money. I'm saying that he is connected, as in he knows about money management. It means that when he put $5 million on the paper, he didn't pull it out his ass. It's
Oh,
just
I
that
see.
Dr. Brown and most people don't do math, and they definitely don't do reparations math, and they definitely more times than not don't understand annuity payments, don't understand that you can plunk 100 million in a fund and then have it throw off your annual salary every month. So just the fact that I looked at his background and I knew that he wasn't pulling these things out of his ass. Is he doing it differently than maybe California task force? Maybe than we OGs have been doing it? Yes, but when I look at his criteria, I look at the use of time periods, harms based, everything lines up. Could it be tightened up in lieu of what we've been talking about with the OMB? Probably, but I would definitely say, in my opinion, what San Francisco is offering, I want that. Okay? I want that, and I want that for all of us. So what I'm
Yes.
saying, I think it looks like a damn fine plan to me, and 5 million. Some have said they don't understand that math. Well, if you only do one kind of math and one kind of methodology, I, along with Eric at the Freedmen Party, we do genocide math, because genocide is illegal in the here and now, where slavery was legal and still is. On a genocide basis, the Proxmire Act states that states, federal government, the United States will enforce genocide laws, which is why Chairman Moore has been talking about the international standard, because she's extremely bright. So this Proxmire Act, guess what, guys? Guess what the Proxmire Act calls for? It actually has a monetary consequence for genocide, for acts of genocide,
Wow.
of $1 million per incident. So sure, it's probably $1 million for a collective, but we're not anybody. But the premise exists for $1 million payment per incident. Angela, have you, in your lifetime, your Black lifetime experience, you think 5 incidences of genocide? So guess what? $1 million for each of those redlining, Negro, whatever. Guess what that adds up to? $5 million.
Exactly, Dawn.
And guess what? That is no statute of limitations, just like inheritance.
Wow.
So when I heard that $5 million, I said, "Yep, sounds about Black to me," as in right, like bet on Black. So when I heard that, when I saw the dollar house, no, I said, no, he knows what he's talking about. Now, will people support this? So yes, we should support that San Francisco plan. I really encourage people in San Francisco to get involved with city council. I believe you have basically a couple of weeks before they take a vote on that plan. And from what I could hear, other than the 2 people on the board, you need to neutralize them, Chan and the other person. But you're going to have to get those boots on the ground, those pull-ups. Yah, you out there, whoever's out there in San Francisco, get it together.
Yes, indeed.
Get your money, get your bag. And everybody else should hold their beer for them and let them do their work.
You mentioned a very new word that I've not ever heard. Did you say Proxmire?
Proxmire Act of 1987 or 88. And right after that was passed, Guess who got reparations? The Japanese Americans.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain a little bit to my audience what that is?
Well, the Japanese Americans got...
No. The Proxmire Act.
The Proxmire Act is a law that was passed in 1987. You guys, the irony around this is incredible. So, guess who introduced the Proxmire Act?
Who?
The Proxmire Act is the Genocide Convention Implementation Act, introduced by Mr. Joseph Biden.
Joseph who?
Biden.
What?
President. Guess what other irony? Guess who introduced the legislation for the apology in 2009 to us Negroes for slavery? But no obligations, but we're going to say sorry.
Barack Obama.
Joe Biden. Joe Biden made the promise in 2000, made the apology, and that's why we went to DC with that apology. So you apologized in 2009. So now we're coming. We want these executive orders. But yeah, Joseph Biden.
Wow.
But no, white supremacy plays both sides. So it's true. Joe Biden got introduced the Proxmire Act that now makes it so the United States has to enforce the genocide laws that Chairman Moore is, using as a framework for your reparations out there. But y'all didn't know that, did you?
Nope. Didn't know it.
Yeah.
Didn't know it. Didn't know it.
Protect Chairman Moore. Just putting it out there. So anyway,
thank you.
Yeah, that is actually a law on the books. And I doubt if Joe Biden ever envisioned a day when we would try to use those for our purposes. But so yeah, all of those things. So that's why the 5,000 number. 5 million each number. Like I said,
it's very reasonable.
Black. Mm-hmm.
But I want to shift a little bit to talk about how Wells Fargo Bank, you hit me to the fact that the NAACP had received $50 million after the San Francisco was agreeable to the terms of the $5 million one-time payout. They hadn't voted on it yet, but they were in agreement. So apparently the task force made the case for it, and how they were in agreement. And then within 2 weeks, Wells Fargo was cutting a check to the National for $50 million. You shared a timeline that I'm going to put on the screen, and I wanted you to talk about that since you were the one to break that news to me. The correlation.
Let me say that this is from Art, the real Art from Twitter.
Yes. That's true.
My problematic favorite, but Art is the one who broke this. And let me pull that up.
Let me see here. I was going to share it on the screen while we talked about
this. That's good. Okay.
Yep.
So on Art said a couple of days ago that on January 18, 19th, the task force. So this has been around, you guys. We're slow. This is why you got to watch in your own backyard. We're all gazing at California State Task Force. Meanwhile, stuff popping off right in our own backyard. You've got to learn to do both, walk and chew gum. But anyway, so January 18, 19th, y'all, they proposed these $5 million payments. Then 2 weeks later, on February 1st, the national NAACP got the single largest donation ever of $50 million And then approximately 45 days later, I guess after it goes through national, and then they got to cut the check for San Francisco, and that probably took about 30 some days for the check to get cut. And so 45 days after check cut, it's clear the San Francisco NAACP president comes out after having drunk the Freedmen blood and out against cash reparations for you Negroes, and says, y'all don't know what to do with that. Y'all don't know what to do with that. So he said he didn't mean that. He meant to say he was cool with it. Well, then he said, I was gonna say it should have been more. Well, so yeah, I suggest you watch Roland Martin.
Absolutely.
Roland Martin. It'd be great if you could throw that part up, but it's not long, but you gotta find it. But anyway, it wasn't a good look.
Well, I'll dig it up while you entertain the audience. I want you to talk about Wells Fargo and their role in slavery. Can you give them a little bit of that while I look this up?
Sure. So what makes this, so heinous is that, we have an organization. So Wells Fargo did participate, like many financial institutions. You might say, oh, wow, that's great. They gave $50 million. They're paying back. Of course, we'd rather have it come directly to us. But let's say we're operating under the old model. They gave $50 billion to our NAACP. They're making amends. Well, meanwhile, they got the whole Pleckert Garvey action going on, whereby NAACP obviously is using this money not to assist us, but to uphold white supremacy. And it's clear as a bell here that they have had a change of heart, and the timeline's pretty much there. But then we can also look and say, is this a one-off event? But then we have to look to what happened to me in High Point, North Carolina, when I was on a reparations task force that had actually been implemented and initiated by the High Point NAACP.
Under the city of San Francisco set up a task force.
Okay, Dawn, yeah, I definitely want you to get into that. But I found the video. Let me see if I can share it. Well,
so you're going to have to find the spot.
Right. Yeah, that part.
It's probably toward the last quarter of it. But let me just finish up that story before you push play, is that
yes,
the High Point president also we had already had 2 unanimous votes on lineage-based reparations, although High Point is a tiny little town. But the point is, after that, the president went rogue, just like Dr. Brown claimed to have done it on his own. But the president of the High Point NAACP also came out against lineage-based reparations. But then on top of that, NARC issued a press release patting High Point NAACP on the back. Now, if I was a real detective, obviously I would go back and I would look to see if High Point NAACP has gotten any recent donations. I think it'll be interesting to bring it back to San Francisco to see if Dr. Amos should happen to end up as being one of the newest national directors of NARC, like Dr. Cheryl Grills was, and like Ruth Simmons of Evanston. So they tend to, NARC and the Pan-Africanist axis tends to reward, the blood drinkers with a position. Yeah. And then I guess the big cherry is they get to get on the federal Pan-Africanist HR 40 board if that ever happens.
Lord have mercy. Let's pray not. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Dawn. So I'm hoping that the family sees all the correlations in the ways in which we're being undermined by our own. Pay attention. Let me see if I can bring this up. Hold on, let me try. It's for some reason my Google is frozen, and I'm going to attempt to share the video.
Patty said it's making my chest hurt.
I know, darling. It's just
I
too
know.
much.
I know, Patty P.
It's too much. It really is. You know, I expect this from white folks, right? But when our people do it, it's on a whole, my rage is on a whole nother level. I've gone off so much that it just hurts on a level that is indescribable. I am angry, and to me, the kind of, if your own people will sell you out, you are lower than well poop to me.
Okay, so let's unpack Dr. Amos Brown, who, by one of his claims to fame, he is a pastor of a church for multiple decades, but one of his claims to fame is that he was in a classroom taught by the venerable Dr. Martin Luther King. And that's commendable. And that probably kept him for probably about the first 25, 30 years after that. But we passed that now. Just like with John Lewis, you know. After a while, just saying good trouble's not good enough anymore.
Right.
But I find that his response, so let's talk about let's talk about the reaction that probably everyone gets, because we've all been groomed. Let's talk about the reaction you get when you imagine cash going into the hands. And then when you watch Dr. Amos, when she finds it. But the first emotion people feel when they think about Black Americans getting cash or restitution, the first clutch in your stomach is jealousy and fear of missing out. So acknowledge that and let that go. The second clutch is fear of white backlash. And to some extent, cynicism wrapped in that fear is what I feel from Dr. Brown's generation and older people groomed and have seen Black folks doing well and be punished for that prosperity. And I think all of us probably have an element of that. We all have an element of fear of getting left behind. I hear that when I heard people talking about San Francisco, they actually said, well, what are we going to do if they get their money, and then what's going to happen to them? We cannot be like that. We have to be more generous of spirit. We have to begin to let abundance flow into our community and know that we're not going to wake up one day and the clouds are going to part and a big reparations bill is going to be signed. It's not going to come like that. I think it's going to come, it's going to build momentum, and the chips just start falling left and right. We see in Evanston, the crack in Evanston, the worst example of reparations, but now it appears they are going to be forced to pay $25,000 to two of the beneficiaries. Now, that might not be a lot, it's not, but that's not what they planned. And bless their hearts, let them go ahead and do it. And then what's going to happen? What do we think is going to happen if 10,000 Negroes in San Francisco get $5 million? You don't think that's going to, the people related to them are going to feel that? There's going to be, just like when we tell the diaspora, let us get ours, and then it's going to be a ripple effect, a domino effect. So yes, it's going to happen like that with us as well. Just like the good things that the task force is doing, the policy recommendations, they're already permeating and rolling out over the country. The ground is being softened. So yeah, I think we should look at it like that. Let everybody, let people get their money.
You know what? People will have the liberty and the freedom to go wherever they please and build a life for themselves. If they don't choose to stay out here in California, that will be optional for them. They can have a life. And while I never thought of his fear in that sense of white backlash, but this is why we need protections along with it.
Exactly.
You see, this and enforce protections, right? Because we've had protection on the books forever. They don't enforce it. And so this is why that has to come with that, because, you know, the likelihood of that is real, especially, you know, if we get the people in the South the repair that they're owed. So yeah, we need enforced protections. If you would put an end to qualified immunity, and white folks would actually get punished and lose their pensions in lieu of these civil suits, you know, perhaps this would stop. If these white folks and these immigrants who sit on these police forces actually had to carry insurance to pay the civil suits when they execute us, you don't think they would stop executing us? So when there's no penalty for, you know, harming unarmed Black men, women, and children, of course they're going to unleash, you know, once we get the repair. But one of the things, we just can't be afraid of that, because it's either, you know, face that and confront that and push for protections and enforce protections, right?
They're
It's
like
either
your
push,
2A protections.
huh?
Said your 2A protections, as in arm yourself and protect yourself.
That's right.
That's
right.
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Y'all should be getting ready for that right now. Seriously, get to the range. Okay.
And I shouldn't talk because I wish I would. I'm not I'm not. I respect 2A, but I think I'd end up hurting myself. So, but yeah, I'm for it.
I'm with you too. But the bottom line is, we either push for economic advantage or we perish. That's really where it is right now.
Right. Because without it, structural violence, which is a way we can describe the lineage wealth gap of 20 to 1 and all of the disparities from healthcare, policing, etc., we can combine those into the new lingo, which is called structural violence. And it works better than white supremacy, because white supremacy now is a little corny, kind of faded out. Nobody wants to be white anymore. We got Asian people acting white. We got Black folks killing us, acting white as, you know, like white policemen. So structural violence is a updated way of talking about all the structures that are, you know, built against us. But the only cure for structural violence is money, is structural intervention, and structural intervention is cash reparations. Structural violence is directly correlated with personal violence. Poor people are abused by the police. Poor people get taken advantage of the bank. Poor people pay more for everything. Poor people pay more to live on a daily basis.
Real talk, sis.
So yeah, structural violence can only be combated with structural intervention. So when we talk about the Office of Freedmen Affairs, that is structural intervention. That is a safe place, a safe haven, an enforcement agency, an enumeration agency. We have no place. If Miss Rose in Evanston had a problem with her paperwork to say she's not happy and I don't want this voucher, I want to check. Wouldn't it be nice if Miss Rose had an office to go and she go see her claims, her claims adjuster, or her autarky advisor, her economic advisor at the bureau, somebody she can trust that she knows is of her lineage, that has been trained to make sure everything she's eligible for, whether it's a piece of gum at the bank on Tuesdays to a home grant just to build a bird bath in the back of her house. There literally are people in the government who act in that capacity, but for who? For immigrants, and guess who else? For veterans. So class is important. Class is protection, is genocide protection. Structural intervention, us getting an ethnicity, that is a form of structural intervention. See us. See us. We are here. You cannot continue to mindlessly and anonymously target us through these AI codified racist practices that now no one has to take accountability for because you can write them in the code. And I've seen it happening in real time. So structural intervention is the only cure for the structural violence, the structural economic exclusion. That's the only way we can fill that gap, is with the reparations, with an agency, with policies, and with ourselves, our presence.
That was brilliant. And the audience is Malika Godson says, thank you, Dawn. You have been so informative. The chat is just, the co-hosts are always busy dropping knowledge, dropping bombs. Yes, the jealousy and the fear, says Malika. Well, the bottom line is we are at a time, with respect to what needs to happen, right? Back in the gap, we could have weaponized the vote akin to what the immigrants do and the white folks do. They don't always vote like we do. We move as a block and we either withhold the vote to our peril or we continue to vote blue no matter who to our peril, and we don't weaponize the vote to get advantage. And so the Democrats have grown very accustomed to us just giving them the vote without holding them to a standard of anything. And so we have done this lesser of two evil. Let's keep voting blue no matter who. And now we're in the fight of our lives to prevent from becoming a permanent bottom caste. And the only solution is reparations. Anytime you can be in California, and this is LA specifically, where 2004 to 2014 Color of Wealth LA report showed African Black 60,000 liquid to US Black 200 liquid. And then we are 44% degreed, and yet African Black incomes were 115,000 to US Black 53.5 to Hispanic, who were 17% educated, 50,000. They were within 3,500 of the 44% degree median income with 17% education. And so these folks, Crayola wanton white supremacists, like Dawn intimated, they don't ever have to call you out your name no more. They just legislate you as a ninja and never have to get their hands dirty. And then they create conditions in our communities where they rob us of the resources that come through, like the infrastructure monies and the TARP money and whatever bailouts that they do for themselves never reach the community. And then they want to scratch their proverbial balls and ask, why is there black on black violence? Because you put them in a pressure cooker, you rob them of an education, you rob them of housing, you rob them of a way to legally feed their children.
Mm-hmm. And it's the displacement, the serial displacement, which we have called homelessness. But with Black Americans, it was urban renewal, it was gentrification. And oftentimes when we were moved out of places, we were promised housing. We were promised things, just like with Special Field Order 15. We were displaced. We were promised things, and we never received them. And so when we look at, yes, someone said the Bureau would be like the VA for freedmen, for Black Americans. Exactly. That is exactly what it would be like. But yeah, I wanted to just point that out. I hope I made my point.
I appreciate you weighing in. So we talked about the first messed up letter that Amos Brown put out. We talked about the conflicts of interest, right? Like you get to be on the city board, and you get to be on the state as a minister and the president of the NAACP SF chapter, right? We talked about how he is repackaging remedial education and public housing and naming that reparations. How he is rebranding things that the city should have fundamentally been doing so that we can sustain the neighborhoods that we once owned and controlled, right? So that we can still be there instead of being driven out. He says 16% potato. And we're definitely less than 5%. He knows full well. Dawn already told you. There are about 10,000 freedmen left in the Bay. We used to run it. Now, let me finish up that letter because I want to talk about the other letter before I pray us out. And of course, do my spiritual treatment.
And BB Rodriguez says she told us about Amos. We didn't listen to her.
Honey, wait.
Hassan
Powell told me. Y'all know I can't remember for 5 minutes ago. But, of course, Hassan is going to always remind me. I told you so. It is a nightmare what is happening. You're absolutely correct, Miss Powell. You're absolutely correct, BB. We have been totally duped. And I pray that they show up in San Francisco because I do believe, huh?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was amplifying. But yes, and 10,000 freedmen. That's it.
Only 10,000 left. And probably 5,000 living in their cars.
Ooh, yeah.
Let's talk about it. See, and the only ones that can really afford to be there are the immigrant blacks. I just told you. 10 years ago, they were at 115,000 median income, 60,000 liquid. To U.S. black, 53.5, 44% degree, and 200 liquid. Let that sink in. So I want to finish the letter, and then I'm going to jump to my other letter so I can get y'all out of here. I'm trying to flash the comments as Dawn speaks so I don't have to spend an extra hour unpacking that. Y'all know how we do. So I'm getting to your comments, and I'll come over and show you each love as soon as I wrap up this last segment that I want to go over. So back to the checklist. We showed you the timeline between the San Francisco board being all right with $5 million one-time payout and $97,000 a year into perpetuity. And well, I don't know if there was a timeline on that, but for a long time.
Yes, no, for 250 years.
For 250 years, $97,000 a year, and they were fine with us spending $1 to purchase a home. Okay, and we talked about how that happened. 2 weeks later, Wells Fargo, who was also involved in the slave trades, who also had slaves, who participated in that whole thing, who we also know out here in California, Wells Fargo got rid of all the blacks in the bank and replaced us with whites and immigrants. And I'm not talking just teller, all the way up and through executive level. I was there for that. I was there for the freedmen removal of Wells Fargo. And we already know how they participate in denying us loans, denying us loan modifications, foreclosing wrongly on our homes, that big $25 billion settlement. Between the major banks, Wells Fargo was included in that. How they came in 2 weeks after the news broke about the $5 million payout, and how Wells Fargo, all of a sudden, out of the blue, gives the national NAACP $50 million. And then, fast forward, bring you up to date, how Amos Brown put out a letter just obliterating the possibility of cash repair, at least through the NAACP lens. And I want to finish that letter out and introduce his fake BS letter that followed. Oh my God. And then we can pray out. Okay. So let me get back to what I was reading. Oh, I want to share the Roland Martin thing, but I can't seem to bring it up on my Google, and I don't want to refresh the screen. So it's over on Mozilla, Fox, whatever, Firefox. Okay, I can't somehow share from one gateway to another. So I may bring that up on my phone so we can hear it. All right. But let's get back. This little piece of letter I got left is just to make a point through my perspective here. Hold on. Just a second. Dara, if you want to say something, you're free to, my love. Lord have mercy. Where'd it go? Okay, so here it is. Let me blow it up. So the last couple things, I was on healthcare. He did nothing specific to the healthcare piece, that we would have more superior healthcare. Like I said, he's just doing leftovers. And then he ends with the Fillmore Center. Okay, he ends with these are his demands. These are his demands, that we get a Fillmore Center, a Fillmore Heritage Center, right? And this Fillmore Center, the redevelopment agency destroyed a great deal of the Harlem of the West when it instituted urban renewal. I call it urban removal programs, and drove Black businesses and residents out of San Francisco. Our people need a Black center of town, just as there is Japantown, a Chinatown. We need to preserve and protect the Fillmore Heritage Center and the surrounding Blacks, not only as an historic center of our people, but as a place to gather and grow the Black community for future generations. This is what he's calling reparations for San Francisco. And what's problematic about Fillmore, I would venture to ask, how many of us still live in that community?
Right.
So what difference does it make if you are trying to reinvigorate a heritage center that we're not there to frequent?
Exactly. Because what the municipalities, a lot of municipalities are using this whole reparations, this local reparations push for infrastructure spending. And like Angela said, things that should have been done for us. And not to get too wonky, but I've been doing some tax work, and just one study of 163 Black businesses in North Carolina in one little town, I found that they paid $43.8 million in county, state, local, federal taxes, created over 3,300 jobs. And that $43.8 million in taxes that they paid out is more business than all the Black contractors in North Carolina got over a 10-year period. So I said 163 Black-owned businesses paid more in taxes in 1 year than the entire collective received from the state of North Carolina over a 10-year period. The city of Durham put out $218 billion from paper clips to concrete from 2008 to 2012. And Black folks here got 5%. 5%. So those are the type of that's the type of payment. So when we say we built this country, not only did we build it by force, then we generated 50,000 patents, then we created jazz and everything else, the internet, GPS system, all along for the last 156 years through Jim Crow, building roads, schools, hospitals for everyone else, paying taxes all along. And I told you about 163 Black-owned business in one small town in North Carolina. And then you think about that $5 million, and you think about the 17% Black population that used to be in San Francisco, And I told you about 163 businesses in 1 year in 2021. Imagine 17% population. Do we think that there were more than 163 Black-owned businesses in San Francisco?
Yeah.
So do we think they created every year 50 million, 100 million in tax revenue, and the jobs that's 17% as it continued to be whittled down, as the taxes they paid in were taken and deflected to other places, other groups, paying to teach other kids how to speak English, training other people, keep continuing to pay in year after year after year, not getting their fair share of federal contracts, all that money being put out to other businesses, them getting those skills year after year. And here we have a 20-to-1 lineage wealth gap. That's what structural
Racism.
Economic exclusion, structural violence. I want the audience to look up structural violence and really become acquainted with that and switch from white supremacy to structural violence. You will fuck everybody up in the head. I'm telling you. Everything is structural, and it applies to all colors. So it works very, very well. And the beauty of it is the only cure for it is reparations and durable solutions for the community that's affected by structural violence. So we get our language in right, but we need to understand how much we paid in. So it's the forced chattel enslavement. It's the 50,000 patents plus all the intellectual and cultural property. But it is we have paid in trillions in taxes. If our economy now in present day, as broke as we are, is what? The 5th largest economy based on our expenditures, 1 point something trillion. Can you imagine? We are poorer now than we were in the 60s. The gap is wider. Each year we have paid taxes.
Without
reparations for us, that direct deposit, my family, my people, is going to come through tax credits directly into your fucking bank account, just like your stimulus check did. If you just hold our beer and let us do this work and respond to the calls to action when you call. But yeah, I think we're set up really well. Black American family, I think we're set up well, despite the NAACP, because it's good that they have revealed themselves this early in the game.
Yep. No matter how hurtful it is, it's to our advantage, because when we go back into these state task force hearings, y'all think my public comments are fire. You ain't heard nothing yet till I get done with Amos Brown. And that's a promise. And for those of you who think, oh, Angela, you need to turn it down. Turn down for what? I would venture to say that being turned down is how we became bottom caste.
Mm-hmm.
Folks is sitting in the gas chamber telling people to be quiet because you're going to sound xenophobic. You're going to sound homophobic. You're going to sound like a racist, like that's even possible. When you speak up and speak truth to power, listen, the advent of the social media and this task force, don't you dare send your comments through email. They will never be read. You got to get it on the record in the recordings so that our children and our children's children will be able to see that we fought akin to our ancestors, which is how we're wired. And like Dr. Claude Anderson said in the opening of the broadcast, you think being second class is hard on you now? You ain't seen nothing till you've been made fourth class. When all these immigrants pile on, you clearly cannot fight everyone. Well, we're going to die trying. And that's the TR Ruth. So back to this letter real quick, Dawn, so I can get you out. You have been amazing. You have richly blessed the broadcast. You have such a beautiful, brilliant mind. I'm so happy to have you here, as I am sure my viewers are as well. So once we bought the smoke, we called up the NAACP National. We blew his phone off the hook. I told you how he was on the phone in a task force, in a Twitter space that he knew not of. And he said we would not know what to do with $5 million. and that he is not going to retract any part of what he said. Well, we bought the fire from all over the country. The NAACP's phones blew off the hook. That's the national. That was San Francisco. Any place we could call, we bought the smoke. So shout out to everyone who bleeds descendant of U.S. chattel slavery for just getting into action just from a tweet, just from a Facebook post. If you got to action and you got engaged and involved, that's called movement work. And that's the only way we get this done. So shortly thereafter, we got a retraction. And not really, right? Let's read it. NAACP San Francisco branch clarification of the rejection to $5 million reparation payment. We are clarifying in bold letters the NAACP San Francisco branch's statement presented on Tuesday, March 14th. This came, what is this date? The 16th? Was it 2 days after we went to war? Yeah, this came on March 16th, 2 days after, from the same Amos Brown. And he goes on to say, the city and county of San Francisco claims to be a progressive and liberal metropolitan city, but it is diametrically opposite. Look at him trying to displace blame. While the reparations recommendations for Black Americans were unanimously accepted by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, who, oh, by the way, are predominantly white, a white immigrant, okay? First of all, let me clarify. Everybody white in this country, including the ones that identify as white, are immigrant to this country. Let's be clear. So when I speak on immigrants, I speak on whites too. While the reparation recommendations for Black Americans were unanimously accepted, I'm going to put my word, by the predominantly white immigrant San Francisco Board of Supervisors, they did not vote last night because the recommendation would not have passed. Now, if they were unanimously accepting of it, why wouldn't it have passed? Moving on, although we feel there should be some form of cash payments and installments to each Black American according to the agreed upon qualifications, we know the facts. They are as follows. Me speaking. Did he say any of this in the first letter? Or did he give you public housing, remedial education, a Fillmore Center where we're not even there to enjoy none of it? What else? Healthcare that wasn't even fleshed out. Did you hear him say in that first letter that although we feel there should be some form of cash payments, even in installments, did he offer any alternative to the $5 million that there was a unanimous acceptance by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors that he in turn said would fail? Moving on. Board of Supervisor President Aaron Peskin, I can't find my glasses, y'all. I think they downstairs in my car. And Budget Chairperson Supervisor Connie Chan have stated privately and openly no on the cash payment as a form of reparations for Black Americans. We know that other board members share this position and will only frustrate, set up, and provide false hopes to Black people in San Francisco, thinking they will get $5 million when the board members oppose. You never even let it get to a vote. You just said it was going to fail, and then you came out in opposition to the $5 million, never offering anything alternative. Watch this now. Again, my thing is, if you're on the state reparations task force, why are you in it? Let the vote go the way of the dodo bird. Let it do what it do. Why do you have to impede after receiving $50 million at the national level? How much of that was kicked down to you, and how much of that was kicked to you directly, Amos Brown? That's what I'd like to know. Because you never even had to get involved. If it fell flat by a vote, then we can blame the people who voted. But no, you come out here with this letter rejecting cash reparations, and now you backpedaling. You mentioned none of this in the first letter, and you had an opportunity to. You're only coming back with this letter to pacify and to patronize us. We see through you. Second, again, there should be some form of cash payout in installments, but $5 million is an arbitrary number. Didn't Dawn just mention to you how these numbers were comprised? Didn't that make total sense to you? Then why is that lost on him and he sits on that task force? Back to the text.
Scary.
Go ahead, Dawn. You want to weigh in?
I said scary. It's scary that people don't feel a greater sense of responsibility. But again, like I said, jealousy, fear, and also a big dollop of cynicism. Because you know what? Truth be told, half the people still don't believe that reparations are going to happen. You know, the NAACP doesn't believe it. Dr. Brown obviously does not believe that reparations is going to happen. It looked good on his resume. And the whole, you know, the commission that I sat on, you know, not everybody actually believes. And when they don't believe, that's when they're dangerous. When they don't believe, and you can be susceptible to non-belief when you're ignorant. So it's like, read a book. Like, could you please read the international standards? If you're going to be on a task force, could you read From Here to Equality? Could you read the modern monetary method? And I'm not saying really do that, but understand that there are people who are out here who have calculated numbers and talked about. And if you're on a reparations task force, your goal is supposed to be compensation at the end, cash compensation. That's all I think about. And I think the way it happens for us is tax credits. And yeah, that's all I got on that one.
I love it, sis. Thank you for weighing in. So he's claiming it's an arbitrary number, but you clearly are there in the midst of everything happening. So you see that they didn't pull it out of thin air. That's what they're telling us. Thank you, Dawn, for clarifying earlier about how this number absolutely makes sense. Presently, there is no explanation of a method for how the $5 million will be allocated. Why are we at that stage? We haven't even voted. You're claiming it didn't even get to a vote because it wouldn't have passed, is your belief.
Yeah, that's horrible. I mean, let's just think about that. And I want y'all to go, and I don't mean to take over, but I do want you to
please take over.
I do want you to go to Roland Martin's show and watch that man. I mean, it just, none of it rings true. None of it rings true. It rings like, the whole thing reads like, oh shit, the advisory board said, like, yeah, we might just could do this. Then the NAACP is like, oh shit, if Negroes get this money, they will not need us. They can buy their own house and they can build a whole new Fillmore Center. They can move, they can buy rental property. They don't have to buy a house. They can do all these things that do not need us at all. And then next thing you know, here comes Wells Fargo, because Wells Fargo's the, oh no, when money starts trickling through this community, they might start their own bank. Oh my gosh, they might hire lawyers. Oh my. Just imagine the huge, that's why when people say, will reparations cure racism, or will it fix white supremacy? Well, that's not the goal, but how can it not completely disrupt? You know, when I listen to anarchists talk, give Black people money and see this society reshaped. So Wells Fargo then comes with its money. So we have to really look at these, and I'm not saying for people who have nonprofits not to get your money, but you know, you're going to be held to a standard. You're going to be scrutinized when you do that. And I think it's clear that it was in Wells Fargo's best interest, who has a deep history of slavery, that if Black folks start getting money, start getting lawyers, start doing claims on their own.
That's the fear.
All we need is some money. You and your family. Like, I'm going to be pitching later in the year. When you go to your family reunion, I got a list of things for you to talk about with your family. One of them being stop talking about that airport y'all owned. Go check that out. Go put together, your first organizing circle is your own family at a family reunion. You got a lineage-based group there. So basically.
Well, I'm going to play it and do my best to get it over here from my phone. But I did want to finish out this part. So he's sitting up here concerned about allocation of funds that he says wouldn't even be approved. We recommend a practical plan, including a rationale of the specified dollar amount. More than $5 million may be needed. So I want you to see the trick bag here.
How is he on the commission and questioning the numbers?
Thank you.
Just now.
Because he's treating people like they don't know.
Stupid. And we didn't know, y'all.
They don't know he's on the task force.
This is even worse, y'all. This is even worse.
This is what I'm
because he wrote it like we would never know. How are you going to question the numbers when you were sitting right there the whole time?
Because he did not expect us to know. Dawn, I did not know this until the last task force hearing when one of the brothers blessed the mic and called him out about it. How are you sitting on the San Francisco task force and the state, bruh? I'm keeping my eye on you. If you rewind the tape from the last hearing, he exposed it. We did not know. And so he's speaking to us because the majority of the people don't know that he's the president of the NAACP and sitting on the San Francisco task force and the state.
Right. So he can send that out to his members. Probably have, like you said, one hand doesn't know what the other's doing.
That's exactly it. So that he can get the Negroes back in line here. Because most of the people that see what's happening don't even know that he sits on that task force and knows it all.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's why. And that's why Roland, it wasn't even clicking because the whole thing is traumatizing. But it wasn't even, that part wasn't even clicking. That he's sitting there literally trying to question his own numbers. It's like, nigga, what were you doing when you go to the meetings? Did you not attend those meetings? Did you miss the meetings? What?
Oh, he ain't missed no meetings. And because you can see the conflict everywhere you turn. Comes out with a letter, talk about no cash. Then he comes out with another letter, talk about, the $5 million was pulled out of their asses. Then in the same letter, he's talking about more than $5 million may be needed. Come on.
Whoa.
Let me play this. I hope I fast forward to the right part.
So the San Francisco NAACP supports direct payments plus investments to the Black community.
Can y'all hear?
Yeah, that's good. Hold on.
And in the 100 plus.
Hold it up a little more. Yes, perfect.
Same things are listed. What we introduced in 2019. You see our.
And that's fine. No, it's like the ancestors are catching his tongue.
On the 30th of July, 2019, our national convention in Detroit, Michigan. So let there be no mistake about it. We support cash plus.
And so the state, so you support the $5 million. But you also, to individual African Americans, but you also want further investment in Black institutions.
Even the $5 million is not enough for the hell, the horror, and the hardship of our people. You can't put a dollar sign on the oppression, enslavement, and downright insult and assault to our humanity. So that was a mistake that was made there regarding our position. And I'm setting the record straight now.
What?
Cash payment plus subsidy programs. That's what we must have to turn things around for African Americans in this city. The median income for blacks in this town is $30,000 a year. But for whites, $110,000. Latinos, Asians, is between $75,000 and $80,000 a year. We're at the worst level when it comes to education and achievement in the school district. We still have the challenge of not being able to get jobs and our fair share of contracts from the public and private sectors, even with all the infrastructure work that's now going on in the city. You don't see blacks handling this heavy equipment. They used to have us holding up signs to direct the traffic, but now you don't even see those jobs. We must understand that we got to approach things holistically, strategically, wisely, and not be cheapened when it comes to this issue of reparations.
Ooh.
All right. So the next question. Do you believe
You stop there.
San Francisco City Council?
You
I
said
need
stop.
I asked you to stop because I needed to groan, and I think the crowd, the people watching, probably need to groan. Like, what the fuck?
You see?
I mean,
You
I think
see?
everybody probably needs to go, what? Before he continues. But what the
You
heck?
see?
How do you even fix your mouth to say that's not enough? So that's the trick bag, everybody.
It's the trick.
It's never enough. We can't put a price tag. Well, you put a 50 million price tag. That apparently was enough, but the never enough. So we gotta know all these signs, and then he goes into his pastoral preacher mode.
This is what he does
and
here.
He can never. But
That's what he does here.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I had to.
This is why we didn't know. And now the nation is thinking, oh, they're getting their pennies in a bunch over nothing. He's clearly for cash repair. I told you on that Twitter space, he was like, you don't know what to do with $5 million. And he doubled down. It left the people in the Twitter space in complete shock. These are the enemies amongst us, people. You got to wake up. And you got to expose it. Because to be silent is to be complicit.
But more importantly, the vote is not in, people in San Francisco. Please understand. Yeah, please understand the vote has not been taken, and the NAACP has no control. So despite all of this, the NAACP is not in charge of the city council. And so Black Americans in San Francisco and California in general should definitely make it known that they approve of the package. Basically, what else should you say? But yes, more please. Yes, we will.
Okay, let's go back.
Is going to support $5 million cash payment.
From what they said on Tuesday night, and I sat there until 9:30, almost 10 o'clock, down to the nose. Gave these eloquent, flowery statements about our pain and what we deserve. But they said, we're not sure about.
Not sure, not no, we're not
in addition
sure.
to that, one of the members, to be exact, Mr. Dorsey, the newest member, on that board. This up for a vote before the citizens. So that kind of conversation, watch out.
So when is this?
They be tricked.
So when is this vote supposed
Oh
to take
my
place?
God, he is so pathetic.
It is really, they put it off until October. Okay?
Look, y'all, you got until October. This is
Will be
fantastic.
adopted at the end of this June. So the money is going to come from somewhere, and this is the reason why there should be right now. So our people will not be misled. They will not be set up assuming that a check is going to be cut for them and cause us to be frustrated, angry, and sad again with disappointment. That's what our basic concern is. And
Okay. Did he express any of that in either letter?
No, he actually had an attitude, if everyone noticed.
Exactly. And double down on his position. Please understand. This is performance. And this is what we've been getting on the California task force from him.
I would grill his ass. I would rake his ass over the coal, make his
Well,
old
I
ass
pray you call in.
I'm not gonna call in. That ain't my business.
Girl, you've been here for us before. We need y'all to call in.
I don't live in California. I ain't trying to get in your business.
Y'all been here from the beginnings. Since 2 years we've been at this. We need y'all to show up and talk and speak with the intellect that God gave you. The ancestors need you to show up. I'm showing up.
They have call-ins.
We have call-ins every time. I thought you called in before.
To San Francisco?
No, this is the first time.
No, I'm talking about San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, they'll have call-ins. Now, will he show? I don't know.
No, okay, wait a minute. Okay, let's compartmentalize here. So the main thing is we want our folks in San Francisco to get the money. So we've got to compartmentalize. Dr. Brown can't get down. He does not have a vote on the advisory board. The advisory board will be voting in October, so we must remain focused. Now, it's going to be fun to poke and prod the old boomer, but that is not the focus here. The focus is a yes vote for what? $5 million, $97,000 a month. So let's stay focused, okay?
Very true. And $1 for the
San
house.
Francisco, y'all. Not the California, but the San Francisco. Get the information and show up, or don't cry later.
Well, we're going to need a call to action to teach the people how to fight for themselves. So we need to be very uniform when we blow up the advisory board for a yes vote, because the bottom line is, and we're in the same fix in this entire state. Once they legislate you out, you ain't got no social capital where the vote matters. You literally are in a position to have to beg whites and white immigrants for your reparations. And so I'm sounding the alarm because I don't want the rest of the country to go the way of California, where you're going to find yourself in this position, begging whites and white immigrants who identify as white, for your repair. And it's coming, if it hasn't already. You will be impacted in this way if you don't get active and put up the gate right now and get in front of this. Let me see other comments. Oh my God, they've been so busy. Miss Angela, we do need protections. 100, says BB. Okay, I'm gonna finish out these comments. Any closing words, Dawn? I don't want to, it's like 5:12. I only meant to keep you for 2 hours.
I just want to make sure that people understand that this is only beginning, and it couldn't be a better situation. You got Republican troll Laura Ingraham goading the Democratic Party and progressives, saying, oh, okay, let's see you pay up or shut up, put up or shut up, Democrats. And so now we've got them exactly where we want. and this is our probably the last cycle, but we've got them where we want them. And I want people to find out when the San Francisco things are coming. I want them to look at the list of eligibility, which in light of new situations, not too bad. But look at the what they're offering. But work on getting the yes votes on the advisory board. I mean, that's what it's going to boil down to. And anybody who is wavering, he alluded to someone, Chan, and the other person, that really annoyed me when he said, because he's sitting in there, this old man at the end of his life, worrying about the bankruptcy of a city that ethnically cleansed like 15 percentage points of population. It's like, please stop talking, Dr. Brown. But basically, we want to make sure that we get in there and get those votes and understand that Dr. Brown needs to be, he's going to have to be called out, and you guys are going to have to be vigilant, because it could all be an okie doke. We don't know if it's real, but we're in a situation such that we have to take everything seriously, push it to the nth degree, work it for all it's worth, the way we do when we do what we do. I don't think any of this was meant to happen. The way we found a crack, and cracks keep cracking, and I think San Francisco could pull it off. I think California could get an agency and some policy. We just have to be persistent, consistent, and we're going to win.
Thank you so much, sis. I am so thankful that you came on. You have richly blessed me and my viewers, my co-host. You guys have been off the charts. I can't thank you enough for keeping it lit. I've tried to share as much of your, I've tried to share as many of your comments as I can, managing between reading to you on the other screen. I'm sorry I had to hold my phone up, but I thank Dawn so much. She's a wealth of information. How can people find you to follow your amazing work in the Carolinas? Could you share your website, or how they can reach you, how they can bless your organization?
I am totally undercover, so you cannot get in touch with me. Yeah, but
I can. She's my sister.
$CBAC USA, CBAC USA, $CBAC USA. But other than that, no. I'm just.
That's your Cash App, love.
That's my Cash App.
I'm
keeping CBAC. A very low profile. I look forward to in the next couple of months. We're working on some policy to reinvigorating the hashtag OFA 51 campaign, which is the organizing campaign to push out Office of Freedmen Affairs in hearts and minds, and if we're lucky, actually in state policy. I want to be talking about later in the year, like I said, Black American family reunions, or the American Freedmen family reunions this summer, and the calls to action that you can share with your family. So that's the main things I'm working on.
Now, see, this is the other side that y'all don't see, the reparationist perspective. Mixing it up with people like Dawn from CBAC and Arthur from Chicago Freedmen and a son from CAP. Yeah, these are the ones that are in the trenches making things happen legislatively. Policy is what we really need. And so I am just richly blessed to be able to learn from them because I'm fairly new. They're very seasoned at what they're doing. So I'm learning from the best in the movement. And I'm just so very, very grateful to you, Dawn, for everything you do for the lineage. Thank you for holding the line. We appreciate you so much. I had to give you your flowers because I know you take a lot of heat. And folks don't really know. They don't know like I know.
Well, I appreciate the heat you bear for us as well with this show, and being so hard line, and being brave enough to talk about immigration and how it hurts us, and there's a long history of that, and we need more voices talking about that out here. So I really appreciate you hanging in here and building your base. And hey, Ms. Powell, BB Rodriguez, who else we got out there? Gwen.
We got so many wonderful people.
Carolyn Harvey.
I see some new people.
Root Trackers by Yara. Geechee Lady Design. All the haters. Patty.
Ezra, Easy Axe. Y'all know I gotta get my family up. Ashburn Connect TV.
Kinky Curly Straight Talk.
Oh yes, I love her. Hi, baby. Diane Scott.
Bobby Jefferson. What up?
Did we get the shout outs? Because they put in work. Yeah. They deserve to be acknowledged.
Michael Pan,
thank you for your kind words. Bobby Jefferson. Yeah. I gotta thank Rashawn.
In Pursuit. In Pursuit asked about is the Freedmen's Bureau a VA for freedmen, for Black Americans? And the answer is yes.
Yes. Reparation is facts, performative activism. You know it, BB. Who else is up in here? Oh, Lord, did I miss anybody? Y'all been busy. I see Super Determined in the house. I see some new people. First of all, I want to thank y'all because I've been gone a minute, and yet we almost to 2,000 subs. I know y'all like, that ain't no Black Authority numbers, girl. You got a long way to go. But I'm grateful for I think it's 1,890 subs. Keep liking, keep sharing, keep subscribing. Because when you like and share, it impacts the algorithms. Y'all know I'm not technical. But I've been really, since I can't go live as often, I've been making sure I bring whatever post I'm screaming on in Twitter, I scream on in Facebook, I bring it to Screw too. So I do believe that's how it's still growing, even though you don't see me live all the time. Know that the lives will reconvene as soon as I get through my 90 days over here at the, listen, I'm blessed to have work, honey. I can't lose my property and stuff. So I've been blessed with employment by my second Freedmen employer in California. And sadly, that seems to be the only real way to get real, genuine employment out here in California. It's been my experience. So I'm thankful. I'm not going to curse my job. I'm not going to call it no plantation. Just know that I'll be back with you once I get through this 90-day period. I would venture to say, where are we in March? I would say by May, I should be back in full effect, doing what I do best, bringing y'all that TR Ruth and telling it like it TI is. And with that being said, I want to thank you. If I didn't give you a shout out, charge it to the time. We're over time. We're like 5:20. And I really want to do our spiritual treatment on what's happening to us right now. And then pray us out. Dawn, you're free to hang here. Or if you have to roll bounce, I could drop you into the lobby while I do this part for the family. It's important.
I'll go into the lobby and stay with you there.
All right. Thank you, my love. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And we loved every second of it. So
great.
Thank you, love.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. So let's do this part. Family, our ancestors heavily relied on God. Now, y'all know my perspective on God. We're going to get into it in a minute. That you are it. So if that's too much for you to handle, I don't mind if you exit. But I have to spiritualize what's happening, right? Because it was the only way our family, our ancestors got us through to emancipation. And for those of you who I heard, Lord, where's my fan? I got to just pick up don't know where my fan is. For those of you whom I heard expressing, there it is, a lot of pain over the reminder that we descend from chattel slavery. Let me help you understand. That's a badge of honor. Okay? Please don't hide your head and hold it in shame over your history. Do you know what it took to give birth to you? Do you know what it took? It took Africans selling us into slavery. It took those slave castles where they held us for months on end, right? Didn't they board us on these most diabolical ships where they had us crammed one on top of the other, urinating and passing feces on ourselves naked? Okay? It took a strong resolve for the people who chose not to jump. Not that I'm discrediting in any way those who chose to jump to their death than to be forced into slavery in this country. But imagine the strength of the ancestors that chose to stay alive, to come and undergo the most heinous chattel slavery known to the free world. And enduring that for years before they fought and won the Civil War, ergo our emancipation, ergo American freedmen. And here we are in 2023 because of what those ancestors who were sold into slavery chose to endure to give birth to you and I. So I know this is painful to identify as American descendant of U.S. chattel slavery, but you being here means you were the strongest to survive the Holocaust that is never ending. So this is no time or no reason to hold your head in shame. We have failed the youth in not teaching them the freedmen history and the trickery of the daughters of the Confederacy and the OMB and wanton white supremacists to keep us in a perpetual state of confusion, to weaken us so that we wouldn't be able to amass 100 million. And that's what all of this oppression is about. It is to keep you a permanent bottom caste because that is what capitalism requires. And they decided when Abraham Lincoln was trying to expatriate us after using us as the shoes to build the wealthiest country in the world, when we would not go to parts unknown, they decide to do to us with respect to the legislation and policies what they would be shamed for throughout the world in terms of public lynchings. Although that's not stopped, it's not at the level that it was. So Don said it best. It is structural annihilation of American freedmen specifically. No one's blues is like ours. So we need you. We need you not only to survive, but to flourish. And if you want to get into this fight and help because you see the boule whose palms clearly have been greased to undermine us, Gmail me at therepperspect@gmail.com, and I will help put you in touch with some of my most respected advocates in this work throughout the country. Hold your head up. You are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. So you got mastery, power, dominion, and authority over it all. Like Dawn intimated, thank God we found out. We got till October to get busy because, as the saying goes, as California goes, so goes the nation. And I, for one, am not going to drop the ball and abandon the mission. I will continue to use my voice to call them out until it is no more, until we are made American. Let's get into the spiritual treatment. Now, this is what you need to write on a candle and let it burn. You can get the white candles from the Dollar Tree, or we got the grocery bargain outlet where I found mine for like $1. They're the tall glass white candles. And you're to take a black Sharpie, and it's a lot to write. You could do it in stages as your hand starts to cramp. But you're going to write this on the candle and let it burn daily until it burns out. Then you'll write it on a new candle until we break the back of institutional systemic racism in the spirit, akin to how our ancestors did on many occasions when they were being oppressed. So here it goes. I declare and decree that the highest form of righteous judgment is served over all corrupt beings of the government, judicial system, including the race soldiers, CPS, judges, attorneys, FBI agents, the CIA, and all personnel working for the United States corporation with wicked intentions. All hidden corruption and agendas are now destroyed forevermore, in spirit and in flesh, in sleep and in awakened states, across all timelines, realms, and dimensions, known and unknown. So, with that being said, family, once again, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever American freedmen and its allies are, God truly is, because, family, you are the face of God. Yes, you are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. If no one's told you how much they love you today, know that I love you, Black family. I love you, Freedmen Strong. Yes, I do. Until we meet again, family, for another production of the Reparationist Perspective, I want you to make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your evening and work week. And until next time, I'm believing for each and every one of us, family, a ton of peace, love, and reparations, family. Lean